tonight we have Cece Suazo with us. Welcome, Cece. We're glad you're here. Cece joined us for a really incredible program that we did in 2018. It was unlike any other program we've ever done before. We did a national call for storytellers, um, all of whom had survived suicidal ideation or attempts and either used the Trevor Project Lifeline as a life-saving resource or found some other way that they made it through and had a survival story to share. So I just put this out there before we get started that we will be talking about suicide and other challenging topics. And just put it in context of the reason why we decided to do stories about that was there were a couple reasons. One was that the Trevor Project was celebrating its 20-year anniversary, and that because the hotline is anonymous, they never had any record of anyone who had ever called in and had a life-saving experience over the 20 years that they were receiving calls. And so this was an opportunity. It was almost like our gift to them was let's find out some of these people who have these extraordinary stories to share about having a life-saving experience through their services. The other thing was that we also know that when suicide is reported about in the media, it's almost always when someone has completed a suicide and there's a contagion effect, and they're what they have call a copycat syndrome can happen. And there's so much stigma around suicide that for those of us who've gone through periods of ideation or attempt, if we are able to survive and get to the other side, often don't talk about those experiences and just bury them. And so people who are struggling don't have access to survival stories. And so we really wanted to make our survival stories become contagious and see if that was possible. So Cece knows James Lacine, who was the co-founder of the Trevor Project, and we reached out to her specifically and asked her if she'd be interested, and we were lucky enough to have her say yes. So Cece, if you would like to unmute yourself, we can welcome you and start talking about your experience. So welcome. Thank you for
Thank you
joining
so
us.
much, Eva. Thank you, Eva and Blake, for having me. I'm Cece, everyone, Cece Suazo. Um, being partaking in the TMI Trevor Project and Lifelines was life experience. It was a phenomenal life experience for me. Um, I, as a child, I'm going to say my mid-adult years, suicide always played the thoughts of it. The thoughts were always there about just wanting to end it all because I felt that I was nobody. I felt that I wasn't worth anything. And then that all changed in 2017 when a life-changing experience that I had happened to me. And that was basically, I went from having fun on my birthday in September, then contracted to do a play, literally during my vacation time that I had to shorten so I can start studying lines and attend rehearsals to the performance. And with that being a rush, I got sick and I didn't know that I was really sick. So I decided to check into the hospital.
Cece, I'm going to pause you right there for 1 minute because I don't want you to give anything away from the
Okay.
actual story that you wrote and shared on
Okay.
stage. And so she's giving the setup right now for the story that she ended up telling, which was exquisite and so amazing. I was so thrilled with the way that the whole thing came together and all the connections that we were able to make.
Mm-hmm.
But so just to give a setup of what we went through, everyone gathered in Brooklyn. We spent 5 days in a hotel basement together, getting to know each other really well, really fast. And in those 5 days, we produced an off-Broadway show. So we met, we wrote frantically, we curated monologues, we edited through the night, and then we rehearsed and showed up at Blake, what's the name of the theater?
Pershing Square.
Thank you. On 42nd Street, and did this incredible performance. So I think before we dive deeper into conversation about what the experience was like and what it was like for you to tell your story and all of that, why don't we hear your story first so that
Okay.
everyone else can hear what you shared that night on that special night? I recommend that when we do this part of the night, you go to speaker view so that Cece has like the full spotlight on her. And then we can go back to gallery view when we come back to have a group conversation. And I think everybody's muted, but for story time, it's good if we all mute ourselves.
Okay.
So Cece, you take it away.
Okay. So I'm gonna set up the story. So right after I did the off-Broadway production of Wig Out, maybe like probably 2 weeks later, I was in the hospital. So I first checked into the hospital on October 16 of 2017. And I didn't wake up until October 31st. And here's my story. It is October 31st, 2017. I wake up at Jacobi Medical Center after slipping into a coma. I notice 3 nurses in my hospital room. 2 of them are dressed in costumes. One appears to have horns like the devil, and the other looks like she stepped out of Josie and the Pussycats. I feel lost. I want to say something, but my voice has been taken away from me. I feel like I'm standing in a gray area, like in an episode of The Twilight Zone. I keep asking myself, why am I here? And why am I being cared for by the devil and a cat? I start to feel hunger pangs, but I don't trust any of these people, so I starve myself until the next day. I wake up in the morning, and I'm still not able to speak. I start pounding on my chest. It's my only form of communication. I can't move my body because of all the medical wiring attached to me. My legs feel as stiff as 2 rocks because of a cast. I'm also starting to notice that I have a catheter attached to my back. Again, I feel alone and dazed, as if I'm in some movie. I keep wondering if Mike Myers is going to make his killer entrance from behind the curtain that covers each corner of my bed. A team of doctors enter, and one proceeds to open a chart that has my name on it, Miss Suazo. He says, "You're in the ICU because you have a rare blood condition called TTP on top of the diabetes and lymphoma cancer. I'm afraid to tell you that because of your condition, you will never be able to walk again. I cannot accept the medical report the doctors just gave me. I'm going to be confined to a wheelchair for the rest of my life. Me, Cece Suazo, ballroom legend of realness who spent decades walking the runway? Oh no, I don't think so." I try with all my might to get up and notice there's no sensation in my legs. The days grow darker and colder. I'm no use to myself or others. I lay in bed, devastated, not wanting to believe the doctor's diagnosis. I keep asking myself, is this it? One afternoon, my son comes by from school to bring me some food because that bland, non-seasoned hospital food tastes so nasty. When he appears at my doorway, he's out of breath. He says something that changes everything. "That hallway down to your room is long. It's like a runway." Just the thought of the runway forces me to sit up in my bed. I chuckle as I remember my days and nights preparing and walking under the sizzling lights of a glittered runway during my ballroom career. I can't help but think about how much I've already walked through so much. I walked through the foster care system, understanding the term adoption at the age of 12. I walked through the doors of the House of La Beja when they took me in as one of their own. I walked the streets. I walked the pier. I walked onto stage when I made my first theatrical debut. I walked through losing my dad and my twin sister on the same day. The more I think about it, I can't help but wonder if my walking days are over. Maybe I've walked through enough. My son says, Mom, I know you're tired, but I still have a life ahead of me. If you can't walk for yourself anymore, walk for me. It's exactly what I needed to hear. I'm so determined to undo that wrong diagnosis of never walking again. I stand up alone by latching onto whatever I can and proceed toward the door. I'm able to open the door, and before me, I see that long runway my son was talking about. I notice the walls have built-in handrails, so I hold on for dear life and I try to walk. I do this for 3 consecutive days, determined to regain my physical stability. One day, one of the nurses sees me struggling and comes over to me and says, Miss Suazo, you shouldn't be up by yourself without your wheelchair. I tell her, leave me alone. This is something I have to do by myself. I inhale 3 times, and with all my strength I can muster, I let my hand off those rails. And I feel so relieved to exhale, knowing that I just made a way for myself by rewriting my medical diagnosis. Eventually, I walk myself out of that hospital. Shortly after, I have a highlight of a lifetime standing on my own 2 feet, cheering as I watch my son at his graduation. I'm here for the young people now. I recently had the pleasure of visiting my old stomping grounds from ballroom career I had for 26 years in the House of La Beja. Being a part of ballroom family prepared me to be a warrior in my everyday struggles, no matter what obstacles are sent in front of me. I am a woman who has walked through many storms and fierce battles. Most of my generation are dead and gone, but I'm still here standing and walking. I may not walk the runway anymore, but I will continue to walk and fight for the next generation. I'm paying it forward now, just like so many others did for me. Thank you. Thank you.
Oh, Cece, it was so emotional to hear you read again. It's been
Thank
a while since I heard you share that story, and there were moments that really took my breath away again.
Yeah.
Really beautiful. How is it to read again? It's been a while probably since you've read it out loud
Just
also.
emotional
Yeah.
with my son, and I get emotional at that part when we was in the hospital and I just wanted to give up, and he just said, do it for me.
Yeah.
Just do it for me. I know you want to give up. I know you don't want to be here. I know you fulfilled everything that you've always said that you wanted to fulfill in life. And just to hear those words from my child at the time, who was gonna be 18, he was 17 at the time. And it's just,
Yeah.
2 years later, I'm here.
And still
I'm
walking.
fighting. I'm still the young generation.
Yes. Yes. I think the reference that you made to being able to revisit your ballroom stomping grounds happened during the week that we were together, right? Didn't a whole
Yes.
crew of you
Oh,
go? That's one thing I really regret is that I wasn't
yeah.
able to go that night. Did you
Yeah,
go,
they were
Blake?
there.
No.
We were there I think we were there to film. But
Yeah,
then I
you guys
took over
filmed.
duties as a host. I catch the mic and I interview everybody. That
I hope they include some of that footage in the film because it
yeah,
sounds like
I
that night was off the
saw
hook.
a glimpse in the film, in the trailer.
Yeah.
Um, and so to have seen the people that was there before me attending, it was like, wow. For
Yeah.
them to have said to me, to acknowledge me, and we consider each other family. And my uncle, Tim, when he saw those cameras, he said, "I'm so proud of you, niece." And to have gotten that recognition from him, because usually as a child, I always got scolded by him. But for him to, he was actually throwing the ball first and foremost. And for him to recognize me and say, "I'm seeing everything you're doing. I seen the award you got recently, and just all the amazing things. Just keep on doing it. The younger generation needs you."
Yeah.
And I said, "I will be here for the younger generation as long as I can. As long as there's breath, life in me, I'm gonna, yeah."
Yes, you're gonna keep showing up. There's a question that came in, what is the film? And over the course of the 5 days that we were together, we filmed the whole experience. And we also interviewed everyone in the cast and then filmed the production as well. We also had people do video blogs before, during, and after the experience. So like, as soon as people found out that they were going to be a part of it, they would send in a video just kind of journaling the experience, so that we could get all of the anticipatory feelings and all of the follow-up feelings that were included. And I know that if we share something on a shared screen, it might be slow, but has anybody here seen the trailer already? You want to try it? Like, do you want to share your screen and pull it up? It might lag a little bit, but I still think you'll get the gist. And Cece is the first storyteller featured in the trailer. And we're actually, I haven't seen it yet, but we are about to get the first rough cut of the film, and we're hoping that we will have a finished product by the fall to be released in the winter. So it should be coming soon, and I'm really thrilled to be able to share this body of work with a larger audience. It's interesting because with the intentions of the film are to help keep LGBTQ youth connected and come up with plans and curriculums that can accompany the film, that can keep kids from all over the country connected with one another, create a community of support. And we had no idea that when we created it that it would be launching in a pandemic where kids couldn't reach each other physically, and that we would be more reliant on digital media. But I think that it actually is going to have more impact now than it would have. So we'll see if this works.
It's been many days. I just said, I'm tired. I'm tired of fighting. I'm tired of battling. The thoughts of just going onto the Brooklyn Bridge or the Williamsburg Bridge and just jumping off. All those thoughts were there.
I'd lay in my bed and be like, okay, I'm gonna go to bed, and then I'm not gonna wake up. That's how I really felt.
You don't see the point anymore. You don't want to fight another day or another minute. You're just done.
I decided I was gonna walk outside and walk in front of a car.
The light of your life is not there. There's no joy to it. There's no happiness.
There's a lot of self-doubt and self-loathing and self-hatred. And if you're left alone with that for too long, it takes over.
I tell everyone everything. And yet, when I talk about my suicide experiences, well, I don't. I don't talk about my suicide experiences.
Suicide, you don't want to talk about because there's so much stigma attached to it.
Oh, about to express a lot of things.
I feel that my particular experience with depression as a theme that I think others could relate to.
I think it's really, really critical that we talk about these things in our lives.
To work with other writers and storytellers and to work with the presenters of this workshop.
Learn from a community of people. It's very overwhelming.
I'm nervous about a lot. I'm just nervous about telling my story.
It seemed kind of impossible to get people from around the country and put them up in a hotel and find a New York City theater and tell their story. And it's amazing how it's all come together.
I think it's the only way we're going to change things is by sharing our stories and telling the truth, specifically about things that we're not supposed to talk about.
It's a lot easier to hate someone than it is to listen to them, I found.
I have written a lot about my experience, but talked about it almost never.
Like between me and my girlfriend, we write a lot of love letters to each other. Trying to write one to myself, it was just like, this is It's different. It's different from what I would normally do.
I didn't love myself at one time, and I just let me go.
In this past year, I've been as close to suicide again as I ever have been.
I just think the incredible thing about being a storyteller is that you get to create this vehicle, basically, that travels out into the world. It sort of lives inside other people and moves out and does the work that you want a story to do, which is to move people, literally, to change them.
I still got a mission. I still got stories, and I'm gonna tell them.
I wasn't expecting to get teary-eyed for this whole thing, but it just got me again. After hearing you share your story, it just hit me in another way again. And I have to say that I caught the ballroom scenes more this time watching after hearing your story than I did the first time I watched it. So we would love to hear, I'm sure many of you have questions for Cece, and I have some as well. So if you want, you can start putting them in the chat. But in the meantime, Cece, I wonder if you could just share a little bit about what the experience was like, the writing, crafting your story, meeting together with a group of people and talking about such, I mean, we met over such a deeply personal topic, and everyone got to know each other so quickly. What was the workshop experience like for you?
I think at first it was kind of, I was scared because I didn't know anyone in the room but names. And I knew that I always had stories to tell. I knew I wanted to be heard. And I felt like you guys gave us a platform to be heard. And then over the course, it was, hey, we're a family. Like, it became from day one, okay, we're unknowns, day two, we're a family.
It was
fast. And it's so funny because, I don't know if you or Blake knew, but we all went out to eat for lunch, I think the next day. Because I was the only one that knew Brooklyn and where we were where we were doing, where we were housed at. And I actually grew up in the vicinity. So I said, hey, there's a restaurant that could sit all of us. And I know the waiters in there. And we went to Buffalo Wild Wings for a nice long lunch. We took our spouses. It was beautiful. And from there, I got this sense of comfortability. I got the sense of I can trust you guys with what I'm about to share. I can trust. It was all about trust for me. Yeah. And I felt that trust was already planted. You know? And I never shared a lot of the grief and the emotions that was trapped inside with anyone because I was always too scared. I was always too scared about being ridiculed or being judged or being disliked. And by sharing my stories, they liked me to where I remember Rain saying, I love you, you know, and Michael and Bailey and the rest. It was like, wow, this is my family. But how do you depart? How do you say goodbye after 5 days? You know? And I think that was the hard part for me.
When it was over.
When it was over, it was like, okay, Cece, you know, you've been contracted to do other things, other projects after this. But how do you move forward when you think about?
I think that's a challenging thing for a lot of people who go through TMI and get really close to the group that they've gone through the workshop with. Although when we do the workshops in person in the Hudson Valley, a lot of people are in shared community. So even if they don't have the workshops to go to after, they can still see each other. But in this case, people really were coming from all over the country.
Right.
Yeah.
So it was like, hey, if I'm in your state, let's check in.
Yeah.
You know, or if you come to my state, let's check in. Let's have some lunch, or let's have a game night, or let's do something fun. You know, and I miss them all. Like, out of all the projects I've been, all the casts I've been associated, this has been in my heart. All 10 of them have been in my heart.
I don't think there's ever I hope that we can be together in person again when the film comes out and we can have the biggest release party on earth, because we all want to see each other again so badly. We have a couple questions that are coming in.
Okay.
Naomi would like to know if you were able to maintain the relationships that you made. Did you stay connected with people from the workshop? Yeah, I thought so.
Yes, big time. Rain, that's my heart, Rain. That is my heart. They're all my heart. But I'm just a sourpuss for Rain. Yeah, so, and Rain is a writer, a playwright.
Yeah.
And oh my God, I love Rain so much. So I love them all, but it's just, Rain is like my little baby.
That was a special connection, yeah. Ruth would like to know, tell me more about how you met TMI.
So it was through Jenna Warsham, Broadway director. And I was the historian for Street Children that was Off-Broadway. First I was contracted as an actress in the show. And when they found out that I had all this ballroom history, they made me the historian of the show. And so I had to, it's funny because I had to go through every detail of that show, from costumes to how they spoke back in the 80s in the West Village Piers. And Jenna Warsham knew my struggles and knew my backstory. And she felt that TMI would give me more closure and healing. And that's when she introduced me to James. And and James, I didn't know that I was in an article of The Advocate. And James said, "Are you that Cece I'm seeing in this article?" So that's how everything came about. And
I didn't know that backstory.
Yeah, and at the time, I think I told you guys, I was in San Francisco doing a play. And I was like, damn, I don't know if I can do TMI. So I was fighting with my management. I said, I don't think I can do TMI because I'm tired. I spent 8 weeks in San Francisco. Get me the hell up out of here.
Well, it also wasn't that long after you were hospitalized. I mean, that was one of the things that I noticed from hearing it this time in 2017, right?
Yeah, right.
So only a year later.
I just kept praying that, 2018 was the fruit for me to really bite in. And it really was. It really was. TMI changed me as a person. And it took me to places that I never thought was within me. When it came to my writing, I wasn't confident of my writing, but I knew that I had stories. So
I feel like we could write 1 billion monologues together.
Yeah.
I mean, just endless stories. Blake is wondering, he's always wanted to ask you about the story behind how you got welcomed into the House of La Beja.
Oh my gosh.
Yes, we all want to know that story.
So I think it was soon right after I knew that, okay, you're never going back home. You know, I came from immigrant parents from Honduras. They were separated, and I was the middle child. I have a brother, a younger brother, and an older brother. And I remember when I first expressed that I wanted to do acting as a child. And my mother, my birth mother, saying to me that there's no money behind that. There's no money behind acting. There's no money behind writing scripts. You're just wasting your time. And so she found a box of women things that was stashed away. Knew it was mine because I was different from her other two children, and basically kicked me out. I had nowhere to go, but I had a friend in school. His name was Jamal, that was out. He was out with his family, with his friends, and in school. And he said, "Hey, just come to the pier with me." And I went to the pier, and I was so amazed. I was like, "Wow, people like me." So I remember it was past a certain hour, it was past 12 midnight, and they were still out on that pier. They were voguing. They were having a good time. People were sleeping. People were sleeping. It was like, I was like, wait, they live out here? And he said, yeah, they live out here. A lot of them have been kicked out of their homes. And so I said, okay, well, I'm gonna live here. And he says, but how you gonna go to school? And so I found out that there was the Harvey Milk School.
Oh,
And
wow.
said, okay, well, if the kids are like me in that school, then I need to get into that school. So I got into this school, and the school said, well, where do you live? And I said, right across the street. They said, where do you live? And I said, right across the street. I sleep right across the street. And the school said, okay, we're gonna place you in an emergency youth shelter, which is Covenant House. So I was in Covenant House for many years until I aged into their supportive housing program. But before then, I was placed in many other youth facilities for runways and kids that were not wanted until the state already picked up my case. And just before then, I was adopted by an amazing family, amazing family. Yeah.
Just recently, I think TMI Project was posting about the Black Stories Matter drop-in workshop, which I believe, Ruth and Twinkly, you've been going every week, right? Yeah. And Cece commented on the post, what about doing a Black Trans Stories Matter workshop and performance series? And I'm really glad and grateful that you said that, because now you planted a seed and it is going to grow into a workshop and performance series. We are going to partner with the LGBTQ Center in Kingston, and we're going to train some new workshop leaders and do a national call for storytellers, and we are planning on doing a Black Trans Stories Matter performance next June during Pride. So thank you, Cece, for making that
Thanks.
recommendation.
Make it happen. I'm so happy that, you know, that you guys are taking the vehicle at doing this, because those stories do matter.
Yeah.
My community, we get killed every day.
Mm-hmm.
Every day. They hurt. Those stories hurt.
Mm-hmm.
One of them was closest to me, Dominique Fells, who was dismembered, and her body was in a suitcase in Philadelphia. That story hurt me the most.
Mm-hmm.
Because we had the same mutual friends, and she too looked up to me as, hey, there's another girl that's in the business, and I do want to be in the business. She was an aspiring model, fashionista. And so I feel that it's time to lift those voices.
Yeah.
It's time to lift the voices that don't have the voices anymore.
Yep.
You know?
That is what we're gonna do. And I'm also so sorry for your loss. It's so unbearably tragic. I was just reading today about the life expectancy of Black trans women is half the age of women. Women are, or actually it's less than that. Women are expected to live until they're 75, and Black trans women have a life expectancy of 35, which is just the most dreadful statistic. And you know, I know that there's the reason that we share stories like this is to change culture, to shift things, to have people hear things that they may not hear otherwise, to be able to be impacted in certain ways. And so if we can participate in any meaningful way to raise the voices of people that need to be heard, that is what we want to commit to doing. So I'm glad that you made the recommendation, and I'm also really looking forward to working with you again. So does anybody else have any other questions after all the things we just talked about before we move into the writing section of the night? We'll wait for a couple more to come in then. Thank you so much, Cece, for sharing your story and everything else that you've shared with us tonight. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's really nice to connect again. Okay, so Ruth is saying she's brand new to TMI, and so even if you've already explained, will you help her understand a little bit more? You said a couple of times that TMI changed your life, and she wants to know more. How did that happen? What was it that was transformational about the writing of the story, the getting on stage and sharing it, and then what shifted for you after that experience?
Wow, a lot. It was, oh God, TMI really did change my life in so many ways. I think it was really putting down my truth on paper and just letting those emotions. I have a mentor, and she says, you know, because I kept saying to her, why do I cry? I remember calling her from the hotel room where we were housed at, and I said, why do I cry a lot? By writing this down, because we had, where is it at? I remember you guys gave us these.
Oh, the notebooks?
Yeah, nope. So I kept saying, why do I cry writing my story? She says, because you're writing from here. And so the audience is gonna feel that. And she says, but stay in truth to yourself because it's your story and it's nobody else's.
Mm-hmm.
And so by writing that, it gave me a boost of self-confidence to continue to write more of my stories. And that's what happened. It also gave me more confidence as an individual to confront the demons that were in place, that were in front of me. And it's funny because a day after we all said our goodbyes, I still stood in the neighborhood. My husband and myself booked a hotel in Sunset Park, where I grew up at. And I told him, I said, I'm ready. I said, I'm ready to revisit my past. I'm ready to revisit where I come from. I went to my old public school. I went to the park that I played with my siblings and my dad. I remember when I went on my block where I was partially raised, someone looked at me weird. My husband said, did you catch how that man looked at you weird, as if he knew you? And I said, yeah, but I don't know if they're gonna recognize me. And I called one of my childhood buddies and I said, hey, Luis, I'm on our block. I said, somebody looked at me strange. He said, they ain't gonna recognize you. You was a kid when they last saw you. So I noticed that the building that my birth mom lived in was regenderfied. Very fancy, very upscale. I said, oh, wow, okay. So I said, I don't know how to press these buttons, but I doubt she probably will open the door for a stranger. So I waited. We hung out on the stoop, and a gentleman was coming out the building, and my husband grabbed the door. So the first apartment I went to go visit was my uncle that I haven't seen in 25 years. He wasn't home, but I left a message. I wrote a message on a receipt. Then I went down, proceeded to go downstairs. And my hand was on her door bell, but I just wouldn't ring it. I just wouldn't ring it.
I had no idea that you even went back to visit your old neighborhood after that.
Yeah, the next day.
It's one of the things I think every month that we've done one of these conversations, one of the things that's the most touching to me is finding out the details from and asking that question, or thank you, about finding out what happens to people after the show is over. You know, like I only know the parts about up until the show is over, we have the follow-up workshop, but then there's a lot of, what I hear about is a lot of unraveling, like a lot of layers coming off, and just the work keeps happening, keeps unfolding long after the show is over, and that's really powerful that you went back.
Yeah.
It was like the unearthing of the story made you feel more prepared to go back and face some things that had been haunting you, is what it sounds like.
It did. And I was able to connect with my older brother, who was so emotional when we reconnected.
And that was the first time in 25 years also?
Yeah.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah. So we reconnected. You know, like my husband said, hey, when you're ready for us to revisit you with your finger on her doorbell, we will do that again. But like I said, the TMI Project gave me that confidence to continue to further my stories. And it happened when I wrote the Deep Play, which is based on my story that I shared with the TMI Project, that was staged at the WP Theater Off-Broadway in New York City, December of the same year. And yeah.
It's incredible.
So this, believe it or not, Eva, this story that I wrote became bigger.
Yeah.
It became bigger.
I wanna read the bigger story. When you're ready to share it, I would love to read the bigger story. Yeah. So thank you so much. I hope everybody can unmute yourself. One more round of applause for Cece. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. It was really moving conversation. I really appreciate you.
Thank you.